Hey, what's going on there, guys? Nick here from Absolute MTG, and I'm bringing you a deck tech for Mono Black Splash Green for the Born of the Gods Season of Standard. Now, basically with Born of the Gods coming out, we pretty much have two cards that are going to make Mono Black better, and that is Bile Blight and Drown in Sorrow, and both cards can be found in this deck. The entire deck list is in the description below where you guys can check it out. There's also a deck list via TappedOut.net, but we're going to be taking a first-hand look here. The one thing that I want to point out is with the splash of green, it kind of shifts us to be able to play different cards, and in that, the splash of green that I went for is to be able to play cards like Abrupt Decay, Golgari Charm, and Gaze of Granite, although you can make variations where you can play things like Vraska as well. However, with that, with playing cards like Gaze of Granite, I naturally opted to not play cards like Pack Rat. So for the past couple of months now, I've not been playing Pack Rat in Mono Black, which may seem like a kind of like awkward thing to say, but it's a card that generally is easily replaced with more removal spells, and it's pretty much just a card that's card disadvantaged in order to actually gain any board presence. So we're pretty much able to punish Mono Black opponents by being able to play like Gaze of Granite up against their Pack Rats while not having any disadvantage of losing our own. So I think that's like one of the best upsides to being able to play this type of a variant of the deck. And you're also able to just play more removal because you're not going to have those 3 or 4 slots for Pack Rat, and you're going to be playing something else. So this is just my variation of it, and it's actually been working quite well. So the deck is pretty much going to play like the main shell like all the other decks are going to be. We're going to be playing the 4 Nightveil Specters, which are going to basically be like one of our biggest devotion enablers, adding 3 black devotion to our mana pool. So the Nightveil Specter is always pretty good for us. Also being able to exile cards off the top of our opponent's library whenever he hits, and we have the potential of being able to play them. We have a 4 Desecration Demon, which is, again, pretty standard. 6/6 for 4, flying at the beginning of combat. Your opponent can sack a creature and tap him down, but he gets a +1/+1 counter each time they do it. And then 4 Gray Merchants. So the Gray Merchant to drain our opponent of X life, and we gain X life, where X is equal to our devotion to black. Probably one of the most powerful cards in Theros, just overall. For non-creature spells, we're playing 4 Thoughtseize just to be able to rip things from our opponent's hand. So it's pretty much just better up against the slower decks, mid-range and control style decks, where our opponent's going to have things that we want to get that are high value, but at the same time we're not putting ourselves at a disadvantage for losing the 2 life from it. So up against fast-paced decks, aggro-style decks, we are going to side out the Thoughtseize definitely. 2 Devour Flesh to force our opponent to sack a creature and they gain life equal to its toughness. Pretty much is only bad up against like Mono Black and also up against the control matchups, just because they're generally not going to be playing a lot of creatures, if not any creatures at all. Devour Flesh is a little bit less favorable in Mono Black just because of Desecration Demon. It does still hit a lot of things. You do still force your opponent to sack things, but I actually end up siding at least one of these out in the Mono Black matchup just because I can side better things in, and also because I don't want my opponent sacking Desecration Demon and gaining 6 life off of it, or more, potentially, if I've been feeding it, but that's usually not the case. 1 Doomblade to destroy target non-black creature, basically just good for any of the other decks like Mono Blue Devotion, Mono Red Devotion, Mono Red Aggro, White Aggro, Red Green Monsters, things like that. We have 2 more in the sideboard that will side in for those types of matchups, but just 1 Doomblade, that way we don't really try to overcommit with Doomblades and run into like Mono Black matchups. 2 Bile Blight, so another edition from Born of the Gods, or I guess the first edition from Born of the Gods that we're taking a look at here, but Bile Blight is pretty nice because it's an instant speed 2 mana that is going to have target creature and all other creatures with the same name get -3/-3. So with that, we can pretty much just punish opponents that are playing like Burning Tree Emissaries and chaining them. It also gets rid of things like Nightveil Specter or Boros Reckoner, things like that. So there's a lot of stuff that Bile Blight hits, and it's a pretty good removal spell for the 2 mana. If it ends up being not relevant for whatever we're playing against, we side it out and just play something else. 2 Ultimate Price to destroy target monocolored creature. So it's pretty much good up against like mono black. It's good because it hits Desecration Demon and it hits Pack Rat if our opponent's playing it. It's also going to hit things like Stormbreath Dragon, which is always good, Arbor Colossus, things of that nature. And for 2 mana, it's pretty well placed removal for us. Abrupt Decay as a 2 of, and one of them's hiding somewhere. There we go. It was stuck to the other sleeve. So 2 Abrupt Decay to destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. So creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less, things like Underworld Connections, the Tension Sphere, anything like that, Abrupt Decay is going to be able to deal with it. So that's always good for us. It can't be countered as well, so it gives us the benefit of being able to play it up against control and destroy the Tension Sphere without having to worry about it getting countered. 1 Golgari Charm. So the Golgari Charm is basically kind of like our Shrivel at an instant speed up against the decks that are playing a lot of X1s. So decks like Mono White and Mono White Splash Red or Mono White Splash Black. We can go and play Golgari Charm and we get rid of all of their X1s, things like Soldier of the Pantheon and like all of their other like Daring Skyjack creatures, Judge's Familiars, all of those small things. Golgari Charm can get rid of all of those. It can also destroy enchantments, so things like Underworld Connections, not Golgari Charm, that's what we're talking about, Detention Sphere, and it can also allow us to regenerate. So the regenerate's good up against Wraths if we've pretty much just overcommitted to the board with things like Desecration Demon or Grey Merchant and stuff like that, or even Nightveil Specters. If we want to protect our things, we can regenerate everything, and if our opponent goes to play like Supreme Verdict, we can protect everything. So the Golgari Charm is awesome for that, but being able to have essentially all 3 modes be relevant is pretty good for Golgari Charm, and we're playing 1 more in the sideboard. And then Gaze of Granite. So Gaze of Granite's basically going to be our ace in the hole up against Devotion decks, especially small-scale Devotion decks, so things like Mono Black, we can pretty much get rid of the majority of their things, and especially if we're far behind, it just gets better and better. And otherwise, like, it's good up against like Mono Blue Devotion, it's good up against aggro decks as well, and we can side in 1 more from our sideboard. We have 4 Hero's Downfall to destroy target creature or planeswalker for 3 mana. 4 Underworld Connections to enchant a land, and the enchanted land has tap, pay 1 life, and draw a card. So basically our engine for being able to draw extra cards. So those are our spells that we have, and for our land base, I'm playing 4 Overgrown Tomb, 4 Temple of Mystery, and Temple of Mystery, the reason being why I played this is because it still allows us to play Nightveil Specter. It's a scry land, which is exactly what we want. We want to scry as much as possible with this deck, actually. And it's also somewhat going to allow us to be able to play cards like if we go and rip things off the top of our opponent's library with Nightveil Specter and they happen to be blue, we can still have the mana to play them, which is very narrow. Like, it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it does. Like whenever you take one of your opponent's Master of Waves or something like that, then you're able to play it and just kind of win more at that point. But Temple of Mystery, it's a scry land. It's going to be on color for us to play our Nightveil Specter. It also provides green mana for us, which is exactly what we want for the splash. And there's pretty much not too many downsides except for the fact that it doesn't add black mana to our mana pool. Otherwise, we would be playing a Golgari scry land, which does not exist right now, for standard at least. So, for Temple of Mystery, just to explain that, and 3 Golgari Guildgate, just for more dual lands for us, and 4 Mutavault, and last but not least, we have 10 swamps, so 10 basic swamps, giving us 25 lands total. Some people will play 26 lands, but I think 25 is just fine. It may be a little bit more on the greedy side, but I haven't had any problems with playing 25 for a while now. And then the sideboard. So for the sideboard, I have 4 Duress. So the Duress is going to side in up against pretty much like decks like mid-range and control. I feel like I say that a lot, but that's basically what it sums down to. Duress is good up against those decks that are playing things like assemble the Legion on top of playing like Elspeths and things like that, like Dega mid-range, where they're playing just a lot of different things like Slaughter Games, Rakdos' Return, and the cards that I mentioned before, like Assemble the Legion, Elspeth. It's good up against mid-range style decks like that are playing a lot of non-creature spells, and it's also good up against control because you get to take things like Jace Architect of Thought, Elspeth, counter spells, removal spells that they have, things of that nature. So Duress is for those matchups where they're playing a lot of non-creature spells. I have one more Gaze of Granite in the sideboard for like aggro style decks and Devotion. One Golgari Charm, basically siding in up against control because it gives us another card that deals with Detention Sphere. It gives us a option to also be able to get around Wraths as well, and it's also pretty good up against the mono white variants as well. We can go and shrivel their creatures, or we can actually blow up Spear of Heliod, so it's good for that. I have 3 Drown in Sorrow, so our other edition from Born of the Gods, giving all creatures -2/-2 until the end of the turn for 3 mana. And we get to scry 1. So basically I swapped out Pharika's Cure for Drown in Sorrow just because the amount of times that you get over a 2-for-1 or a 2-for-1 or more advantage from this card is it's a lot. Like it's much better to be playing a card that's going to give you a not necessarily like a linear 1-for-1 trade with the card like Pharika's Cure does, but rather you're being able to get rid of more things with the Drown in Sorrow than you usually would with Pharika's Cure, even though you do still gain back life from it. But basically, Drown in Sorrow is just better up against aggro. It gives you a way to deal with a board that could be cluttered already and you're just in top deck mode. So Drown in Sorrow is just great for the aggro matchups. 2 more Doomblade for the matchups that our opponent's playing like a lot of non-black creatures. So things like mono-red Devotion and green-red monsters, also for the mono-blue Devotion matchup as well. 2 Erebos for mono-black, just so that they can't gain life, and it's also good for control as well because it shuts off Sphinx's Revelation. So those are basically the 2 matchups that I side Erebos into. And anything that our opponent's playing, things like Grey Merchant, like if there's any other Grey Merchant variants that will pop up, Erebos is pretty much the snap pick that's going to be coming into Game 2 and or Game 3. And then Dark Betrayal, so decks that are playing a lot of black creatures, we can side it in, and it's pretty much our easy removal spell for just 1 black mana to be able to get rid of things. So that is our breakdown for mono black splash green for the Born of the Gods season of Standard. Like I mentioned before, the entire deck list is down below where you guys can check it out, and you can see the entirety of the tech. But if you guys enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you thumbs up the video and subscribe to the channel for more Magic the Gathering content. If you guys enjoyed this video and would like to see more Magic the Gathering content, you can hit the subscribe button on the screen and you'll be notified whenever a new video is available. And for those of you guys that enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh!, you can check out my Yu-Gi-Oh! Channel by clicking on the video in the top right hand corner. Also, be sure to check out our sponsors for the channel, ABU Games and Europe's MTG Madness, for all of your Magic the Gathering needs, no matter where you are.